والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The subject of fiqh, and we are still with the subject of Taharat, and we reached issue 57 regarding rules concerning use of lavatory. You see from details which comes here how much Islam takes care of the even small and single details of life of a human being, and there is rules and regulations for every act we have in our life, that even in lavatory there are so many rules and regulations, and also in taharat, in water, in cleanliness, and the details which will come. And that by itself shows the greatness of Islam, that use these details as a law for the human being. We do not find those details in any other religion or maybe in any other law, human-made law. So that study of this really it shows how much Islam cares about life of the human being and make a law for every aspect of his life. Issue 57 say it is obligatory to conceal one's private parts in the toilet and at all times from adult persons, even if they are one's near relatives like mother or sister. Similarly, it is obligatory to conceal one's private parts from insane person and from children who discern between good and evil. However, husband and wife are exempted from this obligation. See, one of the important things that one has to cover his private parts at time of going to toilet. You know, sometimes in some of the toilets had no doors, you know, in villages or other areas, you know. Sometimes one in a desert for a journey and has to pass his motion in a desert or open place, you know. So wherever one is has to make sure to cover his private parts from any person. Though this law looks very clear and ethical, but unfortunately there are in many places I have noticed the people are careless about it. Islam stress a lot about this point, that it is not allowed to show the private parts at time of lavatory, or as he said, at all times to any person, wherever he is, you know. In some of the schools or in the seaside, for example, the people may take their swimming dress and have the usual dress without caring for their private parts. This is in Islam not allowed, has to be covered. A male from a male or a female from a female make no difference. They have to cover and hide their private parts. Well, is it necessary to have a curtain or other things? He said no. I mean, sometimes even with use of the hand, one can hide his private parts. I mean, that is when, suppose a mother is washing body of her daughter. Her daughter is at the age of, let us say, 10, 11, 12, 14. And when the daughter stands, naturally the backside is not shown, and the front side can be covered by hand. So when you say by hand, not that in the street naturally nobody is doing that. No, you say at certain times one might need that. Well, in public bathrooms, in those countries where public bathrooms are there, when they come out of the bathroom and they want to change the wet garment with another one, so you have to throw one out. Well, usually they are covered, but still better they cover their private parts, for example. Well, if somebody is removing hair from the mother for a daughter, for example, or somewhere in the street, you know, so if they remove the hair of the thigh, naturally the person has to cover the private parts with hand or with any other mean, or with a tissue, or with a piece of a cloth, and so on. So in any situation, even going to a doctor, if it is not necessary for the doctor to examine the private parts, let us say one has an ulcer in the thigh, and doctor doesn't need to see the private parts. You need to see the thigh, though the ulcer may be high. So one has to cover his private parts and let the doctor see whatever necessary to be seen by the doctor. Well, in detailed books, it mentioned even for the doctor, if he can see in the mirror and that is sufficient to diagnose the disease, is not allowed for the doctor to see private parts directly. He may put a mirror and see through the mirror. But if he cannot diagnose, then that becomes necessity. Of course, necessary things are emergency, and these are exceptional. So what I mean, there is a great stress that one has to cover always his private parts from people who are foreign, as he said, except for husband and wife. Another issue he mentioned, what about an insane person, a mad boy, who doesn't understand things, he's a mad. Is it also obligatory to cover the private parts? And he doesn't know, he's a mad. Some, children who are grown up, but they are, like he said, well, even if he is insane, still the private parts to be covered, and the woman has to observe hijab from a boy, even if he is insane. But if he is adult, a boy at the age of puberty, even if he is insane, then they have to observe hijab, and the private parts also to be covered. In case in the bathroom or in the seaside, whatever the situation, in a swimming pool, for example. A third point which is mentioned here about the children who we said dissent or differentiate between good and evil. What does that mean? From which age that one has to conceal private part from the children? The child at the age of 1 year also we have to cover, at the age of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. What age is there? He said if the child reached an age that he differentiates between things, then at that age one has it become obligatory to conceal the private parts from him. The mother, if she is washing her child at the age of 2 years or 3 years, not necessary to cover her private parts from the child, in the banyo, let us say, or somewhere when they are alone. But if the child grows between 5, 6, 7 years, they said that age, around 6, 7 years, when the child start differentiating between good and evil, between things, they understand things. At that age, then it becomes obligatory to conceal the private parts. So that is a point which is mentioned here. A child, they say الطفل المميز. الطفل المميز, the child who can differentiate between things. Now he knows what are the private parts and what are other parts, so he differentiates between them. And usually they say it is between age of 5, 6, 7 in that age. Different views. Some say 7, some say 6, some say 5. Maybe the children are different. So if a child reach at that stage, then the private parts to be covered. Of course, not hijab for the women. No, it is not wajib hijab because he is not yet at the age of puberty, but to conceal the private parts is wajib. Issue 58, it is not necessary for a person to conceal the private parts with any definite thing. It is sufficient if, for example, he conceals them with his hand, as we said, to cover by any mean, by hand, if possible, or by tissue paper, or by a piece of a cloth or handkerchief, whatever possible way is to be covered. Issue 59, while using the toilet for relieving oneself, the front or the back part of one's body should not face the Holy Kaaba. Well, this issue is mentioned by Maraja, probably unanimously acceptable by them, or most of them, they agree with this issue, that at time of going to toilet, whether for urine or for stool, in any way, one's body should not face the Kaaba. Facing the Kaaba is not allowed, it's haram. So the toilets, if it is in a country, let us say in Western countries where the people are not thinking about the direction of Kaaba, if somebody goes to a house of someone, he has to make sure that the toilet is not facing the Qibla. If it is facing the Qibla, he may sit on a side, on a direction, let us say 45 degrees away from the direction of Qibla, to be away of the Qibla. He cannot avoid facing the Qibla. While what he has added is the front facing the Qibla. But Ayatullah Al-Sistani said even the back part of the body should not. I mean, if the Qibla is on my back, I am not facing the Qibla, the Qibla in my back. Again, according to Ayatullah Al-Sistani, that is not allowed. So neither facing Qibla nor facing the back side of the Qibla, in both ways. But some of the ulama, they say for the back, maybe it is with precaution or that, but again, generally, they say neither our face nor our back should not face the Qibla. Issue 60, if a person sits in the toilet with the front part of his body or the back facing the Qibla, he turns the private parts away from that direction, it will not be enough. Similarly, when the front part of the body or the back does not face Qibla, as a precaution, he should not allow the private parts to face that direction. While he said, let us say, this issue is possible about the males. If he is in front of Qibla but he turns his private part away from Qibla, so urination is through an angle to the Qibla, he said even that is not allowed, because what is meant facing by the body, the trunk is facing the body. So if all the trunk is facing, then he is facing Qibla. And he said turning away of the private parts alone is not sufficient. Issue 61, recommended precaution is that one should not face the Qibla or have one's back towards it at the time of istibra, to be explained later, nor at the time of washing oneself to become tahir after relief. Well, at time of urination or defecation, when a stool comes, is not allowed. But if somebody passed his motion complete and now he wants to wash himself or to do istibra, which meaning of istibra is coming, in the future issues, is that allowed? He said as a recommended precaution, even washing himself should not be facing Qibla, and even at time of istibra as recommended precaution should not face the Qibla. Issue 62, when one is forced to sit facing the Qibla or with his back toward it, so as to avoid somebody looking at him, or if it is not possible to do so, or when there is an unavoidable excuse for sitting that way, it is permissible to do so. Well, if somebody is forced, certain places not possible, either in a place where people are there, so only one direction is there, or maybe the toilet in such a way that he cannot turn to right or left on the toilet, and then he has to pass his motion, no other option. So when he is forced, then he is allowed to do, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not question the person for things in which he is doing it because of necessity and force, not willingly. Issue 63, it is a recommended precaution that even a child should not be made to sit in the toilet with its face or back facing Qibla, But if the child position itself that way, it is not obligatory to divert it. You see here two conditions. Sometimes you take your child to the toilet, and if the toilet is facing Qibla and you allow the child to sit facing the Qibla, you say this is not allowed. You should not take your child and put him to sit in a position facing Qibla. Sometimes the child alone, he go to the toilet, and that toilet, not in your house, maybe in your guest house or somewhere, or a public toilet, that toilet is facing Qibla, but the child went on his own, then it is not obligatory for you to force the child to face other than Qibla, because the child himself is not responsible, still not at age of puberty. So for him there is no halal and haram. If he goes on his own, then it is up to him. But for you, if you take him, he said that is as a recommended precaution, that you should not take the child to place where he faces the Qibla. You have to change his direction. Issue 64, it is haram to relieve oneself at the following four places. You know, certain places is not allowed to pass motion there. First, in blind alleys without the permission of the people who live there. Maybe this looks strange in the modern cities, you know, but in certain villages or small cities, the people sometimes they have no toilets, or there is emergency, there is no public toilets, and they pass motion, the emergency pass motion in the small alleys, especially if it has no exit at the end, so he come and pass motion. He said because that alley is the right of the people who live there, who have their houses there, so it's not allowed for you to go and spoil the street where they are using the small alley, and they are using it is belonging to them. So without their permission, you are not allowed to do so. So you have to go to a place where it is in public, but that a closed alley is for the houses who are around it. 2, on the property or land of a person who has not granted permission for the purpose. Well, at house of someone without his permission or without knowing that he agrees or allows you, then it is not allowed to pass motion there. I mean, if you know he agrees or allow you, that is okay. Otherwise, without permission, is not allowed. 3, at a place which is waqf exclusively for its beneficiaries, like some madrasas. Well, certain schools for students of Hawza, let us say, or nowadays if a public school, so that toilet is made for the students of the school, not for outsiders. So if somebody goes there, if it is a trust and it is made for the beneficiaries only, then outsiders are not allowed to do so. Now, if a toilet built for a mosque, so those who want to pray in the mosque, they are allowed to use the toilet. But outsiders who do not want to pray in the mosque may not be allowed to use the toilet unless they know that this toilet is built for public and for those who want to pray. But if it is built for those who attend the mosque only, then we are not allowed. If we use the toilet, we have to perform wudu and go and pray 2 rakat in the mosque, so it will be for those who are praying in the mosque. Otherwise, an outsider, he used the public toilet of the mosque. No, this is not for him, it's for a beneficiary, and the beneficiary is those people who are willing to offer a prayer. The same thing if it is for Imam Bara. Some people, they make their own Hussainiya, private, he built Hussainiya from his money and make a toilet for those who want to pray in the Hussainiya. In certain areas there is no mosque. Well, Hussainiya is a public place, so people come, go to the toilet, perform wudu and stand there for a prayer, maybe in the market, inside the town, or near where the public are there. So that is not for public. Again, that is for those who want to offer prayer or attend if there is a ceremony or celebration in that Hussaini, a majlis in that Hussaini. So it shows waqf for a special beneficiary. That is what it said. It is made for only those who attend this Hussainiya or that mosque or that madrasa, not for public. So he said in such cases we are not allowed to use those toilets. Well, if the toilets are made for public, naturally it is allowed. 4. On the graves of mu'mineen and at the sacred places whose sanctity will thus be violated. Now, if there is a grave of believers and you go and you pass your motion on the grave, is not allowed. That is an insult to the believers, and that is not allowed to be done. We have to avoid it. Well, places whose sanctity will thus be violated. Well, again, maybe the mosque, of course, is haram to make it najis, but other than mosque, maybe the Imam Bara, if its sanctity is affected, or let us say if it is in haram of one of the imams to make it najis, they said because that is against sanctity of the haram, so it's not allowed. And if by mistake, let us say, get najis by blood, then has to be removed right away and cleaned and made tahar. 65. In the following 3 cases, the bottom can be made tahar with water alone. First, if another najasat like blood appears along with the feces. 2, if an external najasat reaches the bottom, and if more than usual najasat spreads around the bottom. You see, it will come that from a stool you can make tahar either with using water, or you can use a cloth or tissue or even stones. 3 times if you clean it with a stone or with tissue paper, it is okay, will be tahar. You know, if there is no water, that can be done and it is tahar, is okay. But he said it should be with water in certain conditions, that if there is extra najasat, like blood is coming out, then the blood naturally cannot be cleaned except with water. Or if it's sprayed around the bottom with more than usual, you know, in that case, like somebody has diarrhea, for example, and it may splash, so that should be cleaned only with water, not with tissue, you know. Otherwise, in usual cases, if somebody is traveling and has, let us say, only a glass of water, he can use a glass of water to purify himself from urine, and for the stool he can use tissue paper. Details are going to come how to do it. In the cases other than those mentioned above, the bottom can be made tahar either by water or by using cloth or stone, etc. Although it is always better to wash it with water. For details, you know, they come on the notes later on. It will come at the issue 68 to 70. Issue 66. The urinary organ cannot be made tahar without water. If one uses core or running water, then washing the organ once will suffice after removal of essential najasat. But if one uses undercore water, then a recommended precaution is to wash it twice, better still 3 times. Now we come here after passing urine, after voiding, to clean. If you have running water like tap water, if you have a douche tap water, then washing it 1 time after removal of all urine is sufficient, because it is core water or running water. But if sometimes the people use a small bucket or a glass or a bottle which is under core water, so maybe 1 time is sufficient. That is why he said a recommended precaution, better to be washed 2 times. And he said it's still better to be washed 3 times. So if somebody wash it 3 times, that means he will cover all the views of the maraja, because some say 2 times, some say 3 times. How to do it, is to pour it once, and then again become 3 times. Not continuously, because if it's continuous, it's counted as 1 time. But if it is 1 time, and then 2nd time, and then 3rd time, that become 3 times. So in that way, it become tahir after 3 times of washing with little water. Issue 67. If the bottom is washed with water, one should ensure that no trace of feces is left on it. However, there is no harm if color and smell remain, and if it is washed thoroughly in the first instance, leaving no particle of a stool, then it is not necessary to wash it again. He used a term here, smell or color. If no physical particles of a stool remain, removed completely with water, then if a color remains or a smell remains, it's okay, that is not najis. Well, maybe according to some of the ulama, they put a difference. If you wash with water, then color should be removed as well. But if you clean yourself with tissue paper and the original impurity, they say nothing of feces remains, then the color is okay. They put a difference. With tissue, the color is allowed, but with water, color is not allowed. According to Ayatullah Al-Sistani here, it looks even with water if color remain, but no original impurity, no particles of a stool. So only color, he said that is okay. Color and smell is okay. Issue 69. If one makes oneself totally tahir with a stone, clod or cloth once, it will be enough, though it is better to do it 3 times. In fact, it is better to use 3 pieces. And if one does not get totally tahir after 3 times, he may continue till he is tahir. However, there is no harm if invisible tiny particles are still there. When you clean with tissue paper, as we said, how many times? Well, he said if with 1 time got clean is sufficient. But according to other ulama, he said no, you have to use 3 times. And 3 times better to be 3 tissue paper. One of them you clean yourself, throw it, and use the second one, clean yourself and throw it, and use the third one, clean yourself and throw it. If after 3 times only color remains, he said okay. Or he said very tiny particle, which is not really stool, not in that sense, that is allowed. But if after 3 times it did not become clean completely, should one clean more than 3 times? He said yes. 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, till you get clean from particles which are remaining. So that is how to clean. Well, he said if it clean 1 time, which is unusual to be cleaned in 1 time, is okay, but is better 3 times. Or if even after 3 times one is not getting clean, then he has to clean himself as many times till he got clean. Issue 70. It is haram to make the bottom tahir with things which are sacred and revered, like a paper on which the names of Allah and the prophets are written, and using bones or dung for the purpose may not make the place tahir. We said to use papers in which some religious things are mentioned, name of Allah, name of the prophets, then that is not allowed. It's haram to use it, because name of Allah should remain tahir always. If by mistake a piece of paper with name of Allah fall on a najis things, then you have to wash it with water right away and make it tahir. But then we said with the three objects, we say like a paper, like a stone, but if one has a stone, is it allowed? Not a stone, bone. Is it allowed with bone? He said no, it may not be allowed with bone. A stone is okay, but not using bone, So he said it may not be sufficient with bone. And using bones or dung for the purpose may not make the place tahir. So it's not to be used. 71. If a person doubts whether he has made the outlet tahir, it is necessary that he should make it tahir, even if he may have been doing it always as a matter of habit. See, sometimes due to obsession or, forgetfulness, somebody usually, he clean himself usually, but then suddenly he get doubt whether he washed himself or not. Well, here, because he was certain that he has passed motion and it was najis, now he is not certain if he washed himself or not, then naturally he has to go and wash himself. He said, sometimes, it is a habit, I always do it, but now I got confused. He said, even if now you get confused, though usually your habit to wash, but then because you are not certain this time you have washed, you have to go and wash. As we said, because certainty should be removed with another certainty. You are certain you passed motion, you are najis now, so you have to make sure that you wash yourself and you are certain about it. Issue 72. When a person doubts after prayer whether he made the outlet tahir before he started the prayers, his prayer already prayed will be valid, but for the ensuing prayers he will make himself tahir. You see, if he prayed, let us say Maghrib prayer, and after Maghrib prayer now he start doubting that I went to toilet but I was in rush, probably I did not wash myself. It's a doubt, What about the prayer he prayed? You see, the prayer he prayed is all right, because when he prayed he was under impression that he cleaned himself, but for the next prayer to pray, now he is not sure that his body is tahir, so he should go and clean his body and make it tahir. These are some practical possibilities which people might face, and he's giving an examples on that. I think this is sufficient, and inshallah in next session we will go for subject of istibra. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.